What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today. With me I have some more RPG horror stories. Speaking of RPGs, I'm looking forward to two third-party books that are going to be coming out hopefully sometime soon, maybe next year. One is the next book in the Humblewood series, Beyond the Canopy, which looks absolutely adorable. And two, Azamet's Guide to the End Time and how to stop it, destroy it, something like that. It's a really long title, having something to do with time dilation and space-time magic and stuff. It's pretty cool. It's pretty neat. But without further ado, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. I think I might have met the worst D&D player I've ever seen. Okay, so I'll give a little context before I tell this. I'm a beginner DM. I run like less than 5 games, but my last game was Candlekeep Mysteries. I chose that because I wanted a defined drop-in, drop-out point for people who weren't feeling the game. So we played through a couple of those, but finally got a pretty solid group together. Me and the DM, Curtis, Kyle, a really funny guy who I liked a lot, and Paul, an older guy, 50s, 60s-ish, whose wife actually asked me to include him. Curtis I've known for yonks and wanted him to be there. Kyle and Paul are just great people I met over asking if people wanted to play over Facebook. Anyway, just had a few games together, just Candlekeep Mysteries at this point, but then I asked, do you guys want to do a longer campaign? Something that would be closer to 1 week for a year or so? And they were like, hell yeah. So I said, we can include another person if you want. They're all for it. So I put the post up, and then enter Josh. Remember, we're a couple of beginners. I'm a pretty beginner DM. Curtis had never played, Kyle had played a long time ago, and Paul played back in like 3.5 edition. So the first thing this Josh guy says, outside of introduction, was, "This is the smallest room I've ever played in." Cool, Josh. That is the only room we have to play in, so get over it. Bro then opens a bag of Cheetos, munching away with his mouth wide open, asking about cards. Okay, maybe he's a bit awkward and nervous and is trying to overcompensate, I thought. No. Person comes in and says, "Wow, this is the smallest room I've ever been. Let me munch some Cheetos, open mouth." Like, how do you not ask the person to leave right then and there? I'll be like, yo, can you stop that? We're trying to play a game. I love playing games digitally because if somebody does want to munch on snacks, there's a perfect button they can press. The mute button on Discord. You don't want to munch on snacks. And it's fine. I don't care if somebody wants to snack away, but be polite enough if you're going to make a lot of noise. Mute at least. Our session lasted 2.5 hours at the Witchlight Carnival, for those who know, before I had to cut it. I ended up making a 5-point list for both things he did in game and things he did out of game. In game, the first thing he did was split away from the party to try to steal some crap from Lost and Found. Try to fight children. I had a time to knock it off after that. Did everything to avoid actually meeting up with the party. Completely skipped events that had actual lore reasons to be there because he was bored of them. Main character syndrome. Out of character, complained about how small the room we were playing in was. Chewed Cheetos with his mouth wide open while talking. Burped in another player's face. Took a crap and did flush. What? Consistently said my character doesn't like your character because you're a dwarf. Okay, no. If somebody doesn't have the decency, the common decency to flush after themselves, get out of my house. You're out of my house. If you're gonna act like an animal, like an actual beast, not gonna flush, it's just a simple button. Flush noises, and that's it. Simple as that. And of course, wash your hands. Of course, you're nasty. I bet you he didn't wash his hands. If a person can't even flush, I don't think I want him at my house ever. Like, it's a litmus test at this point. If you can't flush, don't be here. Don't be at my house. Kyle and Curdy were on their phones, looking at me occasionally like, really? And looked at them back with eyes saying, I know. Paul was a lot more tolerant, but even he was starting to get annoyed, especially since he was the dwarf character. Still kind of felt bad for kicking someone out of the group, but I know it was the right decision. Also, the longer I've spoken to the other players, the more and more they tell me, nah, thank you for getting rid of that guy. I understand the intention behind, like, oh, I feel bad kicking somebody out, but in this situation, nah, screw him. He can't even he can't even flush. He can't even flush at somebody else's house. I could talk about their in-game behavior. I could talk about their out-game behavior. But at the end of the day, my line was already been crossed by the fact this guy can't even flush. If anything, you're doing your players a favor for kicking out a problem player because you are saving your players from the headache that this guy is going to be for next sessions to come. Honestly, I don't think you need more players. You got currently a nice group of players of 3 or 4. I think you have about 3 players. Play with them. Don't play with some regular, like, annoying Andy somewhere out there, you know? You got a good players there, just play with them. GM wouldn't help me with a character sheet, so they kicked me an hour before the game. I went to share my experience with the new GM for Vampire Masquerade one-shot, and I think it's important to address the challenges I faced. I've been trying to get help creating my character sheet for over a week, and I haven't played Vampire in 3 to 4 years, and the version being used is different from what I'm familiar with. Despite reaching out for assistance, I spent more than 5 hours at my desk researching on my own, trying to make sense of the rules. I specifically asked the GM to check over my sheet, directed questions like, where is this in the docs, and is this correct? Standard inquiries a player should be able to make. I wasn't totally lost, just needed clarification on my clan perks, and make sure I had done the stats correctly. I had an idea what kind of vampire I wanted to play. That sounds like a very reasonable thing to do, especially if you haven't played in forever or if you're just brand new. If you're going in brand new to the game and DM is fine with it, I feel like it's kind of their responsibility to help tutorialize you or at least catch you up on different addition differences. Which I mean shouldn't be that difficult to take 5 to 10 minutes or even 15 minutes, hell even 30 minutes out of your day just to make sure that you can help out the player, make sure the character sheet is done and taken care of properly. It's a very normal thing to do. Let's see what happens. With just 90 minutes left until the game, GM decided to kick me from the game instead of offering the support I needed. They stated, that's not how I work as a GM. We may not be a good fit. Which I found unreasonable. Yes, it's unreasonable. I'm mad, but I'm also laughing at how absurd it is. That's not how I work as a GM. Alright, Mr. Pompous Princess. Sure, that's not how I work as a GM. Well, thank you for doing me the favor, remove me from the game so I don't have to play with a terrible GM in the first place. In fact, I think this GM did you a favor. They removed you from the game before making you play with some horrible, terrible ass GM that will not even help you check through your character sheet to make sure it's okay. If they can't even do that for you, how can you expect them to play even a proper game whatsoever? Imagine if the player has a question like, hey, DM, I'm just making sure I understand this magic item correctly. Boom, removed. You know what? This GM gave you a favor. GMs are meant to help players navigate the game, especially when it comes to character creation. If it had been several sessions into the campaign and I was still struggling, that'd be a different scenario. But this was purely about character sheet assistance. Feeling disregarded, I chose to leave the chat. I believe my response was justified. Lack of communication from the GM was frustrating, and even something as simple as asking about their time zone felt cumbersome. If asking them simple questions is so cumbersome and difficult, they're probably not even worth wasting your time on it, honestly. It's not that difficult to help somebody with a character sheet or double check something with a character sheet, and if that's too much of them as a problem, I understand if, let's say, for example, it was too stressful for them and they said, look, listen, I can't help you, I'm busy with stuff, session's gonna be starting in 19 minutes, I'm so sorry, but we're gonna have to just try to get you in for next session instead. That'd be one thing, but GM said, this is above my pay grade as a GM. It's not the kind of GMing that I do. You just gonna have to be removed. Big on, peasant. So stupid. You know what? Dodge the bullet in this situation. Let's continue with the next story. Finally had my first horror story as a DM. The opening context. I had only been GMing for about 5 months, which equated just as many sessions. I had a little bit of history of playing, but not much thanks to unfun parents. I'd ran some Star Wars RPG back in the early 2000s though. Years later and a few big moves later, I'll work for an event location and then start hosting D&D nights. And as for anyone with experience that wanted some extra green to host events with, which, awesome. Didn't love that mine was the only hand that went up. First session ran fine, very supportive and knowledgeable players that definitely picked up my slack when it came to knowing the lore and rules off the back. But got to a few months in when the venue decided to sell extra tickets and tables. Yay, we had been selling out. Except they did this without having any other DMs on standby. Or really telling anyone, just me turns out, for names until the day of, and we had sold 15 seats, raised the makers that 2 people not showed, but this still left me running a party of 13 who were much paid to be the unexpected at a game. Complete mismanagement. 30 people for 1 DM is no. What the hell? No. Some shops can be a little bit overzealous. If you have enough staff to run games, that's one thing, but not a single guy running 13 people. You know, there should be a litmus test. Whoever is running a game shop should be forced to run DMing and just to be in a DM seat to know how stressful it can be with a lot of people. And even then, with 6 people total. So understand that more than 6 people at a table is too much. Hell, some people would say more than 5 people at a table is too much. 6 is my maximum limit. Depending on the type of players that I have in the group that I have, I may occasionally accommodate 7 or 8, but that's only in very special case scenarios. It was an ice Nordic themed dungeon we had been running the night, but the map I've been supplied was nowhere built for a party that size. I don't know any that would be. I had to adjust the monsters on the fly in strength and numbers so people wouldn't walk through every room and around. Reframed the adventure as the whole party being a town mob storming a legally distinct Granos cave. As I'm writing this, I guess it feels like a win for the throwing me through a grinder of improv and running sessions. I just wish 1/3 of the players were not exceptionally hard to deal with. From a new person for whom this was the first game, really role-playing well but rolling awfully, to veteran players who picked everything apart that was not run by the book. I've never been so emotionally exhausted after running a session. One of the regular people said I managed it really well, but I definitely didn't feel like I gave everyone enough attention. It has been a few months since, and we got more DMs, and it took a couple months to build up trust back, but we are selling out tables in a manageable fashion now that this doesn't end in tragedy. Still wakes up from nightmares of having a giant table of strangers looking at me for direction every other action. You went through a meat grinder and you done well. At some point, everybody goes through some sort of a meat grinder in one way as a player or a DM. Inadvertently, your kind of moment to go through a tough spot, but you did it, and you did it once, and that's good, and hopefully never again. Next time your shop decides to put 13 people at your table, you can establish your boundaries and say, no, my hard limit is maybe 6, maybe 5, but not 13. You cannot make me do this. Get somebody else to run the other games. I don't recommend every DM to do this, but as somebody who ran through a grinder of 8 players in a session, and it definitely changes you and gives you perspective on things, I don't recommend using this as a learning experience. But if you really want to test your ability for improv and being quick on the draw, sure, try it. It's difficult as hell, and I really don't recommend. I don't recommend anybody unless you're a masochist. If you're a masochist, sure, unless you really want to test yourself. But if you're not a masochist, I don't recommend it. What? Don't look at me like that. I'm not a masochist. And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thank you so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.